So good morning, everyone. It's good to have you here. We have been learning Parshat VAYERA, a Torah portion that really defies any kind of explanation, even the most creative of interpretations. It is really important for us to face it head on and to do so in the name of all those who have attempted to face Torah and grow in learning together today. I want to offer this Torah in honor of my beautiful father, Rabbi Gary Creditor, who has been my greatest teacher of Torah throughout my life. It is a blessing to be able to have him here and to know that wherever I go, his Torah follows and is channeled through me. One of the places I'll be delivering some Torah today, since Valerie pointed to it, is the UJA Lions of Judah Luncheon celebrating women's leadership as part of our philanthropic community, where one of our regular 9 o'clockers, Joy Zellen, will be honored with three other really phenomenal leaders. So, in honor of my father's Torah and celebrating joy today, let's celebrate joy today while looking at a complicated parsha. Here's some Torah for VAYERA. We look at the binding of Isaac every year, and we look at it not only when it comes up in the cycle of the Torah readings, Parshat VAYERA, but we also look at it on Rosh Hashanah. On one of our holiest days, we revisit a very intense and complicated parsha. The rabbis did not choose simple parts of the Torah for us to witness and re-experience as the world is reborn, and perhaps that is part of a message that we can bring forward today. Perhaps one of the reasons that we are called to face the binding of Isaac twice a year, especially as the world is begun again on Rosh Hashanah, and as Breshit, the cycle of Genesis, began just a few weeks ago, we face it again very close to Rosh Hashanah, because that's actually not the way to birth a world. Let me get into the text itself. Achar hadvarim ha'ele is how the Binding of Isaac chapter begins. Achar hadvarim ha'ele, after those things. And after those things makes any reader wonder, well, what things? Well, after those things include the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. But if you keep looking back, it also looks at the capacity and willingness of Lot to distance himself from his own family. Lot and Avram had a lot of stuff, and there didn't seem to be enough space. And tradition says, I'm quoting the Netziv, Rabbi Yehuda Tzvi Berlin, that Avram wasn't willing to say to Lot what needed to be said, which is, your heart isn't with me. It's time for you to go. Avram's heart wasn't there because he didn't want to lose any more members of his family. Because if you continue looking backwards, Avram's call from God happens in the verse after Avram's father dies. He doesn't want to continue losing what he has. So he doesn't say what needs to be said. And so he's never truly whole. He doesn't speak from his heart. And that is most clear in this week's Parsha when God says, Achar hadvarim ha'ele, after those things, God spoke to Avram, but the text says, Veha Elohim nisa et Avram. God tested Avraham and says, Kach na et bincha et yechidcha asher ahavta et Yitzchak. Take your child, your son, et bincha, your son, et yechidcha, your only one, asher ahavta, the one you love, et Yitzchak. And over, the rabbis interpret each of these lines, each of these words within each line, as one more difficulty that Avram has to surmount. Avram says, but I don't have one son. I have two. What you need to remember is that just chapters ago, Avram forced Hagar and Ishmael out. So he had two, but now he has one. And the rabbis are accentuating his deep yearning to be close with his child. Kach et bincha, your child, et yichidcha, your only one, asher ahavta, the one you love. But I love my children. I loved Yishmael, and now I've lost Yishmael. I don't want to lose Yitzchak. And then the verse says Yitzchak, specifying with increasing intensity. And even though the rabbi's interpretation have Avraham responding to God's cruel command, how else can we see it? To test someone by commanding them to commit such a heinous act to their own child. How to love God after the Akedah is part of our work, isn't it? But to look at Avraham in the immediate aftermath of the command and to see that Avraham says nothing, we have to wonder, why does he say nothing? Well, there's an example later in the Torah of a father saying nothing when we can't imagine a parent saying nothing. When Nadav and Avihu, two children of Aaron the high priest, and it's a complicated story, so I won't even invoke the story, but when they die, the text says, Vayidom Aharon. Aaron was silent. And in that silence, interpreters have said there must have been cataclysmic trauma, or acceptance, or speechlessness. Now, after Aaron's silence, Moses is there, his brother is there, and in a clumsy attempt to comfort him, he speaks. But in our Parsha, when God commands Avram to sacrifice Yitzchak, Avraham says nothing, and neither does God. After the cruel command, nothing is said by Avraham, and then nothing is said by God, and that leads many, many commentators to suggest that Avraham failed the test because he was supposed to speak up. Just a few chapters ago in this week's Parsha, Avraham speaks up for Sodom and Amorah, a city that is recognizably cruel and corrupt, and God says, I'm going to destroy them, and Avraham says, no. Well, how does Avraham speak up for strangers and not for his own child? Maybe in Avraham's silence, we either see a failure or trauma. How can he speak? This whole journey has been loss after loss. In fact, the very journey begins with Avraham leaving everything behind. How could he find words? But what's also important to see is that after Avraham's non-words, God doesn't speak either. And in fact, after the binding of Isaac, God never speaks to Avraham again. Avraham continues to be a character in our story. And yes, at the binding of Isaac itself, when Avram's hand is outstretched, can't even do it with my own hand, with a knife over his child, an angel of God calls out from heaven. But it never says that God does. And commentators have noticed this careful delineation of language. An angel speaks to Avraham to stop him from committing the act that he should never have been willing to do, that God should never have commanded. And the difference between God and an angel is one step of separation. Avram and God never speak again, and the saddest part of all, Yitzchak and Avraham never speak again. How could they? I bring all of this in not to bring us down, even though what I'm sharing is obviously so intense and such a problematic text and so sad to think about. I bring it out so that we can focus on why it bothers us so much. What should we long for? And I say this mindfully in honor of my own father. We should yearn for the kind of love that my father has always shown me. Constant care and presence. And above all, a rule that is the opposite of Avraham's, which is do no harm. To act in a kind way toward our children, and by extension, to take that model of divine love, gentle divine love, and to see that that should be the inheritance and experience of every child. That is what leads us into the world to do the work that the Torah manifests in an organic, ongoing way. God learns how to care better throughout the Torah, which is also an interesting parenting trajectory. God shows up less as an intervener throughout the text of the Tanakh. The power of that model is also because that's how life is. First, our children need us for everything, and then our children need us differently. And then our children need us in an emotional way, but not necessarily in a physical way. And that is our opportunity to fulfill the Torah's chief and heaviest obligation, kabed et avicha v'et imecha. Honor your parents, which tradition tells us is take care of your parents. But it's a cycle of mutual care that Jewish tradition learns. And I would offer this on this week's Parsha as a reaction to the binding of Isaac. I always want to be able to talk to God. And I want God to continue being a presence in my life. Well, the best way I can be worthy of that is to pay close attention to my children's needs. I'm blessed to have learned that model from my parents. But my children is a phrase that needs to include more than only my children. Because everyone's children are my children, and my children are the world's children, because the circumstances of the world will affect them in ways that I can't prevent, but I can, and you can, and together as a Torah community, we can create a fabric where life never experiences something like the binding again, where no truth that any one of us claims is more important than the dignity and life of children. I say that mindfully because we have just experienced an American election, and last week we experienced an Israeli election, which don't make the world simpler. Last night and today we mark Kristallnacht, where the world was not a safe place for our children. We must learn from the ravages of our textual history and our lived history what it is to create a world where there is no broken glass, where children are safe. That is in our hands, friends. VAYERA shows us what the world looks like when we don't do it. May we be blessed to face this Parsha, eyes open, full hearts, wounded hearts, of course, but full hearts, ready to continue to build a world worthy of our children by seeing them first and foremost and building a world for their sakes. That's what we're called to do. I bless all of you with just a touch of the love that I am trying to convey, which is just a hint of the love that I've received from my Father. And if I can be a good son, I can share it, because that's the point. Bless you all, friends, wishing you comfort and strength, wishing you amazing experiences of love and safety. Can't wait to learn Torah together with you again tomorrow. Just a reminder, it's White Shirt Friday tomorrow, so let's see if we remember that tradition, even though I'll be the one wearing the white shirt. Bless you all, friends. Let's sing our way into a good day. Ya la 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 la, diddy ya la la la, diddy ya la 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 la, ay ay la la la, ay la 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 la, diddy ya la la la, diddy ya la 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 la, ay ay la la la. Bless you, friends. See you tomorrow.